Welcome everyone to our webinar. We are going to start in just a few minutes. Looks like everyone is getting signed in. We're just going to let the others get in and we'll get started soon. All right, we still have people joining, but I think we can get started. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so glad to have you here for this really important discussion on transforming teaching and learning. My name's Kim Oppelt, and I will be your moderator today. And before we get started, let's just take a quick look at the agenda. We will start with some brief introductions of our speakers, and then we are going to provide you with a little bit of a background on how class envisions the next gen classroom. And then actually a bulk of our time is going to be spent discussing some topics around how we're transforming teaching and learning in higher education and the tools and techniques that we need to make that happen. So you are more than welcome to join our discussion today. Feel free to add your questions or thoughts into the Q&A box in the Zoom platform. And with that, I am beyond honored to be able to join our two leaders in the field of education and technology. We are joined by Michael Chasen, who is the co-founder and CEO of CLASS, and Dr. Ravi Pendse, the Vice President for Information Technology and the CIO at the University of Michigan. I'm going to give each of them just a few minutes to share their backgrounds, and we'll start with you, Michael.
Well, terrific. Thank you very much and welcome everybody. So excited to be here today to be able to talk about such an important topic. As a little bit of background, I'm the co-founder and CEO of CLASS Technologies. We have developed technology that adds teaching and learning tools onto Zoom. Before this, I was the co-founder and CEO of Blackboard, a large e-learning software company that let institutions start to bring their educational process online, both to complement traditional classes as well as for full-blown distance learning, where I got to run that company for, almost 17 years. And most important though, I'm a father of three. I have a daughter who's now in 3rd grade, a son who's just entered 9th grade, and an older daughter who is now in 11th grade, all who've been home during this pandemic, teaching and learning online. So I've also just had some front line experience in seeing the challenges that teachers and students are going through as all of this education has kind of moved online and moved online rather quickly. So again, excited to be here and excited to be joined by a good associate and a personal friend of mine, Ravi. So let me hand it over to you, Ravi.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Kim. And it's great to be with both of you, and it's great to be with all of you. My name is Ravi Pendse, as Michael indicated. I have the privilege to serve as the Vice President for Information Technology and Chief Information Officer at University of Michigan. I'm also a faculty member in the Electrical Engineering and Computer Science Department. Wouldn't you agree that it has been an interesting year? To me, it felt more like 5 or 6 years. I know we have learned a lot together. The forced digital transformation that was brought about by COVID has been an interesting teacher. COVID has brought us pain, so much trauma in the community. But at the same time, we have learned through this pandemic. It has been challenging, inspiring, concerning, sometimes fun at the same time. I don't know about you, but every day, about a few times, even now, after a year later, I have to be reminded that I'm on mute. So you are on mute is something which all of us, at least a few times a day, think about that. I don't think most of us had even heard about Zoom bombing a year ago, where that has also become part and parcel of our daily lives. How often did your meetings go to cats and dogs before this year, with our pets visiting our meetings at interesting times? many virtual pizza and coffee gatherings later, it is great to be here, and I'm looking forward to this dialogue and learning from all of you.
Thank you so much, Ravi. I can relate to all of that, actually. And we're just so glad to have you here. I'm not sure how I followed that, but just a little bit about myself. I am the Director of Advocacy and Community here at CLASS. I'm also a licensed school counselor, so I got my start in education in a high school and as a school counselor. From there, I transitioned into ed tech, where I've been working in services, professional services, and product development. And I'm most recently doing a lot of research on K-12 and higher education student success. So like Michael, I have 2 kids who are going through distance and hybrid learning right now, and a husband in college admissions. So we're feeling the pain over here, but it's been really inspiring to see how educators are pivoting, and I'm really excited to learn more. And without further ado, I just want to hand things over to Michael to provide a bit of background on CLASS and our initiatives to support the next gen classroom.
Great. Well, thank you. Well, I'll only take just a quick minute because I'm really excited to get into the general discussion and topics today. But to just give you a little bit more background, as I mentioned, I have 3 kids, all of whom I found at home full-time during this pandemic, and all of their teachers were using Zoom. And I just saw the challenges that they were facing every day, fully engaging in the class. And not only that, the challenges that the instructors themselves had. A lot of them actually ended up even reducing their class time by moving online. And so I went and I spoke with a lot of the teachers that were facing these direct challenges. They were like, well, why are you having so much trouble translating that class online? And they said, look, Zoom and the other virtual classroom tools are great for lectures, and they're great for group discussions, but there's a lot that we actually do in the physical classroom that you can't just bring online in Zoom. We do more than just lecture. We also take attendance. We also hand out assignments, do work live in class. We might give tests or quizzes. We have group presentations. We even have one-on-one discussions with students. Then we might also use the internet or watch videos or grade items in addition to the lectures and the whiteboarding and the group discussions, the breakout rooms. But about 60% of what they did in the physical classroom, they weren't able to move online. Of course, in my own background's in computer science, and I was the co-founder and CEO of Blackboard for 17 years. And so I got together with a group of developers that had previously worked and built an expertise in developing synchronous and asynchronous learning technology. And we were aware that Zoom had an SDK and that it had the most powerful, scalable, and secure backend for audio video conferencing. And we developed CLASS. We took the Zoom SDK and we added to it teaching and learning tools, student engagement functionality, attendance and ID verification, proctored exams, seating charts, and class management tools. And so we have built the first essential synchronous learning app that lets teachers deliver an in-person classroom experience online. And what that means is we've basically taken the Zoom interface that everybody is very, very familiar with and has become a standard, but we added a few small things to improve the engagement and add teaching and learning tools directly to Zoom. We took the teacher out of the grid view and put them up on the instructor podium so that whether they were speaking or not, they could always be watching and participating and leading the class. We brought forward this idea of having a front of room so the teacher could say, you know what, I want the TAs or I want presenters to be at the front of the room like they would in a real classroom and present to the rest of the students who are in the class. We added a bunch of seating chart capabilities or different views so that the teachers could easily organize the class alphabetically, organize them by the amount of time they've been speaking in class, organize them by hand raise, putting them in order by which they raise their hand, all ways to allow the instructor to better organize and run the class experience, making it more engaging for the students. Of course, we built in attendance tracking so that you could easily see which students were in the class, who was absent today, if people were tardy, when they came and left. We made it even easier for students to raise their hand in class, to be participants in the conversation. We added full assessments, quizzes, and tests so the teacher could give these exams live in class and really get a better understanding of how well their students were understanding the material. And then, of course, we are adding proctoring tools to Zoom as well, so that during these times when the teacher's handing out an exam or a quiz, they can not only see the student's face, but what's going on their desktop. Not just to stop cheating, but also to be able to pull forward that student's desktop if they're having a problem and say, oh, I see the problem you're having here. I see the work that you may not be doing correctly. Let me go ahead and have a one-on-one discussion and help you with that. Lastly, we incorporated a full browser right into the product because we saw a lot of teachers, particularly in the K through 4, where they were using third-party content that their school had licensed, but couldn't easily get that in front of the students. They would have to tell their often second or third grade students, okay, minimize Zoom, load a browser, go to mathblaster.com, and half the kids would get lost half the time. So we made it really easy for the students to say, we could go to math class, we could go to Wikipedia, share that with the class. It pushes that website out to all the students and then lets them engage with it actively. And then lastly, one of the things that I'm the most excited about is just we are collecting such important data on the live student experience in the classroom. We have a full dashboard that lets the teacher see how long they held the class for, how long the teacher spoke for, how long the students spoke for, how many kids raised their hand, how many gave feedback, how many took the exam or the assignment, the grades they got, and we break this down by class, by student, and you can look even across classes to really get a better understanding of what's happening and what best practices are taking place in the online class environment. And I think that having access to this data, quite frankly, is really going to help revolutionize the next generation of learning, not just online, but in the classroom as well. So we're very excited to be able to sponsor this conversation to talk about just what's happening with online learning today and where we expect that to be going forward in the future. So with that, let me hand it back over. We can begin our discussion.
Great. Thank you so much, Michael. Every time I see this, I get so excited and inspired to see the innovations that are coming out of this really challenging moment, especially in higher ed and in K-12 actually. But on that note, let's dig in a little bit more around what the next gen classroom is going to look like. And we'll welcome Ravi back into the conversation and of course, Michael. And I think I want to start with the fact that we are seeing so many institutions announcing their plans for next year. So many are saying that they're coming back full time, but then also I think a lot are coming back with some sort of online or hybrid learning options. So the first question is really about what lessons have we learned over the past year in terms of virtual, hybrid, online, face-to-face learning that we can use to better support teaching and learning as we're moving forward in this world of, in this new world. And let's start with Ravi on that.
Okay, well, thank you, Kim. Obviously, great presentation, Michael. Appreciated the detail that your team has gone through in thinking about this product. So appreciate that. And as I think about the question you asked, Kim, at the outset, what I would like to do, and I know all of you will agree with me, I want to give a shout out to our incredible students all across the country who have endured a very tough year, to say the least. Overnight, they had to start figuring out how to navigate new ways of learning and connecting with each other. Many seniors everywhere on all campuses had to forego one of the most exciting parts of their university journey.
Did we lose Ravi on that?
Classes fully online.
There's...
Are we okay here?
You're good. Keep going. Yep.
Okay, I just want to make sure. All right, because I'm getting a message, believe it or not, internet connection unstable. So I'm worried a little bit about it.
Yeah, now we can hear you great. So keep going.
Great. Okay. Our faculty colleagues had to dig deeper, as I pointed out. Hybrid, high flex, blended, flipped, all became part of our daily vocabulary. And I know our faculty colleagues have worked very hard across, and I salute you. And what can I say about our technology and our staff? All of you have been superstar. You had to find another gear to support our entire community. And so as I think about what we have learned lessons, I personally, and I know many of my faculty colleagues agree with me, I do miss seeing our students in person and their energy. I miss the organic learning that occurs outside of the classroom. And there are creative ways, of course, to leverage technology to provide some opportunities for organic learning and more, and we should be leveraging those and tools that allow that. It does require, however, incredible investment of time by faculty member and staff members, and many of us have done that, and I'm grateful for that. I also learned, and we learned, that one size does not fit all, and we have to carefully and thoughtfully think about it as how we support. Each modality, whether it's in-person, hybrid, blended, high flex, has great value and could be leveraged to complement each other. So even as we hopefully come back in person, we will have opportunities to leverage all of the tools that we have learned. And when it comes to technology, my honest opinion, simpler is better. So let's work together to simplify as much as we can when it comes to technology. When one is online, and if multiple time zones are involved, asynchronous is often better than synchronous, in my opinion. And I think many instructors will continue using some of the technology supported opportunities to enhance engagement with students. And as a leader, I plan to continue holding my own town halls, for example, fully online. We need to ensure that faculty and staff have time and resources to get the training they need.
Mhm.
So in summary,
Ravi, I think you ran into a problem with your internet again.
Sounds, and we'll let him catch up, but let's switch over. Michael, I know that you've been looking at the lessons learned. That's how you built products. So do you want to talk a little bit about what we've learned over the past year and how we can bring that forward in teaching and learning?
I think it's really interesting because you can't expect the fact that we have now trained hundreds of thousands of faculty and millions of students in online learning and not expect there to be huge ramifications. I think that what we're anticipating is only the tip of the iceberg of the change that we're going to see in education and online education over the next several months and years. Right now we're just talking with a lot of schools that are planning on, some are planning on just going back, thinking that they're going to be doing education the way that they were just before the pandemic. Others recognize that, no, this has forever changed things. And there are schools that said, hey, we have not ever used online learning before, but now we're going to have some complementary classes online, or we're going to look to expand our offering a little bit here, or let students that are sick at home now kind of stay home and dial in, or have teacher office hours online. Everyone's talking about how they're going to start using this technology more and integrating it more into their school system. But the real change, I think, is going to come longer term. I mean, this has caused so many students to get more comfortable with online learning that I think that, maybe online learning isn't really meant for everybody, but certainly there are now more students who realize that, hey, they can get a full education online, and they're going to be more open to that. And what that means is that eventually there can be more, whether it's public or private institutions that are bringing programs online that will actually lower the cost and increase the access to education overall. So I'm excited about not the changes we're going to see immediately as schools now just start to go back, whether it's in a full in-person or some kind of a hybrid format, but the changes we're going to see over the next year or two, when all of these students who have had at the end of the day a good experience in online learning and see it can be successful, now are open to the possibility of getting more of their learning online, and how that'll redefine the education landscape.
Yep, absolutely. And Ravi, do we have you back?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm trying to be.
Sounds great. So
I don't know if you could hear me before or not, and if you didn't, I'm very sorry.
We could, yes, we could hear you for most of the time, and then it just kind of faded. So I think we're good to go now. No problem at all, right? It's technology. And I wanted to kind of come back to you on the fact that the University of Michigan was really a leader in online learning even before the pandemic and everyone moved online. So what were the pre-COVID benefits to virtual learning? And then what hurdles, looking back, did your institution have to overcome to ensure access and equity across the board?
I think that's a great question, and that really top of my mind when it comes to access and equity. But before I do that, I do want to give a shout out to our president, Dr. Mark Schlissel, for his vision to invest in academic innovation at and for amazing leadership of my colleagues, James Hilton, and now James Devaney, who leads our Center for Academic Innovation. And frankly, all of our forward-thinking deans and faculty colleagues, it is that entire team that really made University of Michigan a leader in online education even before COVID. We fully understand and appreciate that it is actually, in my opinion, much harder to teach a class online than in person in terms of preparation that is needed when you want to teach a course online. You have to be really, really thoughtful. Along with subject matter expertise of a faculty member, one needs a team around faculty colleagues to design and deliver a well thought out course online. The team, of course, includes instructional designers, simulation experts, IT experts, well-designed platforms, tools, and so on. And in Michigan, there is the famous quote of our football coach, Boshim Beckler, the team. And we really, really need team in this case. It's very, very true. So when the pivot happened, we had great teams and ideas in place. Our challenge was scale and speed. I mean, it is not easy overnight just to switch the entire campus fully online, fully remote work. And I don't think anybody was ready for the kind of pandemic and the forced digital transformation that we endured. So we had to collaborate collaborate a lot with each other, across institutions, with our partners such as class. And even in our extreme decentralized environment, people came together with one purpose. How can we help each other and support our outstanding students so that the learning can continue? And as the switch to fully remote and fully online happened, we did the best we could also, but discovered many challenges. One of the challenges you talked about, connectivity, and especially the last mile connectivity, as you just saw in my own case. It's even in the most advanced nation in the world, it's still a challenge in many areas. If you were an international student, for example, depending on your country, there were access issues to certain resources. Faculty colleagues had to take that into account as they were assigning things to read and watch outside the classroom. What if you assign a video on YouTube and YouTube is banned in the country that you're studying from? Access to laptops, university supplied software was a challenge. And we actually at Michigan started a centrally funded program to provide laptop loaners. We figured out a way to drop ship the equipment to students' homes, because what if they were not here in person? And we haven't solved all those problems yet. And those problems continue. We had challenges with specialized software and licensing because they were not licensed to be operated remotely, for example. So we have learned through all of these challenges. And as a result, we are better prepared now than we ever were before. Hope that answers your question, Kim.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. And then kind of on that note, and this is for both of you, what have each of you found really transforms that virtual learning experience for instructors and students? So maybe what tools, what techniques have impacted student engagement and then student success, as well as bringing in that instructor effectiveness. And let's start with Michael on that question.
Well, look, that's the very question around which we started class technologies. So what we were seeing was that teachers that were just giving a lecture and were limited to only group discussions will only had access to a portion of the tools that they were used to using in the physical classroom. So the more things that you could give a teacher to do, so if they could, when they're done with the lecture, say, okay, we're all going to do a live assignment now, and I can even talk to students one-on-one if they don't understand or having problems, or we could give a quiz live in class, or now we're going to use this online content, or we're going to use this third-party content from a publisher, and now we're going to go into breakout groups, and you're each going to come back with your own answers and working in teams. Giving the teachers the ability to have all of those different components of a class is what really keeps the students engaged. And it's engaged students that are the key to having, I believe, to being successful delivering online learning.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And on that, Ravi, any thoughts that you have on what has really moved the needle as far as virtual experiences?
I think if I put my faculty hat on, overnight, for example, I was supposed to somehow manage the Zoom class while I may have spotty internet connectivity. I had to pay attention to chat questions that may be coming. I had to worry about Zoom mobbing, and I had to do all of those things overnight. And that is it's extremely difficult for faculty colleagues. I mean, they stepped up and tried it. So my goal and message to my team has been, can we keep it simple? Are the tools that we are providing easy to use? Do they, for example, support accessibility features and as a result are inclusive? Because we do not want to leave behind our students and faculty and staff who perhaps have, are hearing impaired. So what are we doing about accessibility of all the tools while keeping them simple? Also recognition that online is not the exactly same as replicating, say, exact in-person experience. There are differences. Each can leverage and enhance each other. Thinking about LMS, recording lectures, transcription, remote office hours, a lot of opportunities to provide, but making sure that we simplify. And also not all tools are going to fit an instructor's teaching style. And that's where our experts, staff colleagues, such as instructional designers and others come in and can work with each instructor and our faculty colleagues to make sure they have the tools that they need. And last but not the least, just like I said, the team, training, and more training. How can we ensure that we provide training to our faculty and staff with the right simplified tools so that they feel comfortable and at their very best, whether it's online, in-person, hybrid, high flex, blended, whatever it is, can we provide the right kind of training?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as we're moving, I mentioned that many institutions are coming back full-time, face-to-face, but that kind of base of learners that we have online is expanding exponentially right now. So we really have, we're moving past that emergency period and into more of a place where we will be having learners in two different categories, or even three, hybrid, online, in person. So what kind of tools and resources can we use to reach a broader audience effectively, kind of no matter where they're learning? And let's start with Michael on that.
Look, I think going to what Ravi was actually saying a little bit earlier, we actually really need to still be focusing on the basics. So making sure everybody has high-speed connectivity, or everybody has computers, or there are multiple computers in the individual household, are going to be the key to being successful. Even before the added feature set and additional capabilities that we're building at class. And I'd be curious as to what Ravi has seen, because I think that one of the things that's I've really seen through this pandemic is just how communities or the institutions themselves have come together to make sure that that bare minimum is in place. I mean, you have towns that recognize that there are certain areas that had low internet access, and they work to make sure that those students had access to being online. There were schools where the kids didn't necessarily have computers at home, or they may have one computer at home, but they had 2 or 3 children at home. And then they work to get those, either temporary or permanent loaner computers out to those communities. So I think everyone has been coming together to make sure we have the bare minimum. But now I think it's going to be beholden on all of us to make sure that that continues, and we make sure to elevate internet access and computer access everywhere. Because only once you have that can you then add things like Zoom or like class on top of it to make it a better experience. Hey, Ravi, I'd be curious as to what your institution did and kind of what you've just seen in the general communities of what people have done to make sure that the online learning programs were working.
Absolutely.
No, I think that's a great point, Michael. And I do know that the pandemic in this instance brought the best in people, where people came together to support each other. So whether it's the internet service providers, so who, for example, decided that their basic level connectivity, they would make it available for free or at a very, very low cost to neighborhoods where this was a challenge. Institutions like Michigan and others, I know, even went to the extent of having hotspots available where people needed them, partnered with other sister schools, other schools, saying, hey, some of our students are living in this area. Could they use your lab or your library, whatever was available? So people came together to try to provide that. That last access and last mile is going to be a challenge. And I'm not trying to make a political statement here, but I just heard and saw that the current administration is talking about a big infrastructure project. And while there are lots of things in it, one of the things that caught my attention is, significant resources for enhancing overall broadband across the country. And I think we as a country should take advantage of that and absolutely need that to solve that challenge of access. I mean, I feel that with the kind of technology and people and resources this country has, there should be gigabit access across everywhere, let alone my poor internet at my home. It should be everywhere, and that's a must, and we should all partner together to do that, so that then on top of that, like you said, Michael, tools such as Class, Zoom, others, Adobe Creative Cloud, all of those can come to play, and really learning and education can occur supported by exceptional technology.
Absolutely. Thank you. I want to shift a little bit and address kind of the enrollment in higher education institutions. And I know not all institutions are affected, but we are seeing some institutions struggling with a decline in enrollment. And even in 2020, we saw a 2.5% decrease over 2019 enrollment. So with projections like this, and continuing, really, how can institutions start to look into changing their strategies? So both in terms of delivery model, and then even with degree construction to align to the needs of students. And Michael, I think you might be best for this one.
Look, I think as institutions try to figure out what their long-term strategy is, obviously online needs to be a key component of it. I think when people are originally thinking of online programs, they were thinking, oh, hey, this is going to be something completely removed from the institution. You're either going to have students that are on campus, or you're going to have students that are online. And I think what the hybrid learning that really has ended up developing, where even if you're going to campus, you might take 1 or 2 classes online, even if you're doing 3 or 4 in person. has really become the norm. And so I think that the big surprise maybe kind of coming out of this isn't the acceptance of fully online learning, but it's how institutions and what institutions are doing for hybrid learning. That's actually going to be key to the long-term critical success of education.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Ravi, any thoughts on that?
No, I think Michael makes a great point, and enrollment has been a challenge for many institutions, and many smaller institutions, frankly, are facing existential crisis. And broadly, higher education in general faces interesting challenges from entities like Google, AWS, Microsoft, in terms of curriculum that is job focused. Coursera, that just went public a couple of days ago. If you look at the largest content providers on Coursera, it's really Microsoft, Google, and then University of Michigan and all others. And so we should be talking broadly in terms of unbundling of the curriculum and other innovations, as some lawmakers are already questioning relevance of higher education. And of course, that's my personal opinion, but we really need to think in terms of partnering across institution and figuring out ways in which student is at the center. A student is empowered to learn whatever they want and wherever they want from. And the online tools and online resources make that easily achievable without having to move from city to city. And I hope that someday we accomplish that.
And just to build upon that, so I think exactly going to what Ravi said is that I understand that schools are facing this challenge in lower enrollments. That's why they need to really kind of get a handle on how are they complementing their in-person classes with hybrid learning with full-blown online learning, and how can offering all three of those help lower the cost and increase the access to education? I mean, that's what really gets me the most excited. I know that this is, all institutions right now are facing a challenge with that, but how can they modify their own business goals to making sure that they're really opening up their institution to more people, especially if you have a specialized degree program or you're in a particular area. Those things have to be factored in to even greater detail. But I think that if you can extend the reach of your offering and really focus in individual unique areas that kind of set your institution apart, I think you're now letting every institution start to compete on a global scale. So I think there is, well, a lot of challenges in front of them, a lot of opportunity as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Well said, Michael.
Agreed. Let's take an audience question really quick. This is a good one. With the return to the online classroom later this spring, it's likely that we will have to integrate online and virtual with students in the classroom. So the questions are, A, do you think this trend is here to stay? And B, how can class help to tackle this emerging format to maximize engagement and learning? So Ravi, let's start with, or either,
I think this is one of the, building on the answer to my last question, I think this is actually one of the hardest questions schools are going to have to answer. So what's so interesting is we just trained all of these teachers in how to do online classes, and finally people are getting the hang of it and they're interacting with the student, and they were like, okay, go back to class, which you're of course familiar with, but no, you're going to go back to class, but also be doing online at the same time. So we're literally throwing all the teachers into a completely new environment yet again, all within the first year of them even just learning how to run their classes online. I think it's actually a very different skill set to run a class in person, to run a class online, to then run a hybrid class where you have some of the people who are remotely dialing in and some in front of you in the classroom. So I think that we're just starting to learn how to best run hybrid classes, and we'll see over the next several months that what are either the technologies or the tools we need to apply or the help we need to give teachers, because I think that the hybrid class model is one that's going to stay, not just to prepare for future pandemics, but as we now tell kids, hey, if you're sick at all, please stay home, you can dial in, or if there's just a challenge with specific students asking classes, they'll now be able to do it. So I think hybrid classes are going to be an integrated part of the school system. But I mean, it's almost like, hey, we're telling all the teachers again to start over anew and now figure out how to do, hybrid learning. So I think there's going to be a lot of technologies that'll come to help and complement them. I know we're going to be focused on it, but we're just at the beginning of figuring that out. Now, Ravi, what are you seeing with that?
No, I think, first of all, great question from the audience member. And I do believe that the modality of hybrid learning is here to stay. For example, even for fall, as this great institution has announced plans for generally, thoughtful in-person residential, experience back in class. But we are also focused on that some of our larger classes likely would stay virtual. And to Michael's point, a lot of the activities such as problem solving sessions and others could remain in virtual mode, discussions and so on. So it is all of those modalities coming together. I also know, for example, thanks to the tools that we are developing and the virtual medium that we are very good at now, and in Michigan, we used to look forward to it, frankly. Everybody did, including myself, snow days when it used to snow. And I think the concept of snow days as we know it is probably over. And because we now have the ability to, teach wherever we are, as long as we solve the access issues that we talked about. So if you're thinking about getting snow days next winter, I'm not so sure we even get that. So, but jokes aside, I think it's here to stay.
Yeah, the downside of having a successful online learning program means no more missing school randomly and praying for that snow day to get out of an exam. Yeah.
Right.
My kids are so disappointed in that. So I'm going to take another audience question if that's okay, but this one's related to class. And are there, or what are plans for class to support asynchronous learning aside to synchronous learning?
That's a good question. Look, a lot of schools already have great asynchronous technology. They're using Blackboard, they're using Canvas, they're using Desire to Learn, or they're using Moodle, or one of the other many learning platforms that are out there. And those are always meant to complement traditional classes. Now, sometimes schools would use them for full-blown distance learning, but for the most case, students would still go to their class twice a week, but then they get their course syllabus online or take a test and quiz online all after class. What really Zoom has done and what Class for Zoom has done is we've really looked to bring that actual synchronous physical class experience online. So we're not replacing the blackboards or the instructors, we're replacing that in-person class experience, which means that you as an instructor still may want to also use your e-learning system or LMS to provide additional context or content or materials. I think the technologies are very complementary. Most schools are obviously continuing to use their blackboards or the Canvas instructors using Zoom plus Class for their synchronous learning piece. And then using their LMS to complement that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I agree with Michael there. And as I pointed out in my earlier comment, when time zone differences are involved, or sometimes students may be in different countries, we had encouraged our faculty colleagues, and they themselves came to that conclusion that leveraging sometimes synchronous, but sometimes asynchronous is very important as well. Because it's really difficult if you have a 9 a.m. class in Eastern time and somebody has to wake up at 6 in the morning to join the class. Really difficult. And so that's why I think both modalities are here to stay, and both modalities are very, very important in enhancing and supporting learning.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. And kind of a little bit of a piggyback on that is another question from the audience that I might build on a little bit, but the audience question is there a way to facilitate teaching negotiation and interviewing skills? But I'm also wondering, some of those other things that we think about more of in-person learning, like even stopping into a career services office and having a lecture from career services, or other types of online learning, tutoring, all of those services that we would normally go to on campus. How do we facilitate those pieces in an online setting?
So if you want me, Michael, you want to go first?
Go ahead, Ravi. Go ahead.
So I might make an interesting comment related to that. So my own organization, we have a very large internship program because we frankly are able to recruit very talented young men and women through our internship program to become our full-time employees. And this past summer, we were at an inflection point because we had already made offers to almost 40 interns. And then the pandemic occurred, obviously, everything was going to shut down. So we had a decision to make. What do we do? And we had never had a situation on campus where we had a remote intern program. And so we decided we can honor the offers we had made, and we're going to figure it out as we go along. And so that meant shipping devices and computers and software to interns' homes, wherever they might have been in the United States, and then working with them fully remotely. And one of the things we do with our interns is, along with obviously leveraging their talent and teaching them skills that were needed to do the work, we also teach them a lot of the soft skills that the audience member asks about. So whether how to interview later on, how to work together, how to collaborate, how to write a good report. And for that, we bring in a lot of experts from across the University of Michigan. And what we interestingly found was doing that virtually was so much easier to get people and experts to come in and talk to the students, and students enjoyed it too. And we had to be very thoughtful about how we create different types of interactions. So for example, every morning we had a stand-up 5-minute meeting with all the interns. And we were able to bring in all different types of speakers to teach those skills. So this year, as we were going with the internship program, while we had some possibilities of keeping it in person, the virtual internship program was so successful that this summer we didn't even bother. We just said it's going to be virtual. And we we had over 600 applicants. We selected 39 interns and we're ready to go. And we're going to keep it entirely virtual because we saw the value, and our interns saw the value in leveraging experts across the university and country to teach all of the interesting skills that the audience member is asking about. So virtual is a very powerful medium, and we, at least here at Michigan, in my organization, found it to be very, very successful.
Yep, absolutely. One more audience question, I think, from Rebecca, and she says, many of us have been teaching high flex synchronous while we do not know who is going to be present. So while she enjoys the challenge, it's difficult to keep everyone engaged when toggling between live and those zooming in. So anything that you can see in the future that would enable this, any best practices that you have for managing kind of those two situations? And Rebecca even says that her students say that they want this to continue. So to have those options.
Ravi, what have you seen for best practices there?
Well, I think, frankly, we are learning together on this. Mm-hmm. So there is, and as I indicated before, there is, and Rebecca asked a really great question, because students like the flexibility of this high flex learning. They like the fact that some days they could come into the class in person, or other days they could be fully online. And it's mm-hmm. really, really hard on the instructor. And the best thing I could recommend is working with a team that's hopefully around Rebecca and helping Rebecca to figure out the best modalities that work for her teaching style and her students, because it has to be personalized. It is difficult to find one size fit all. And then learning through and assessing through what's happening. And that's what we're trying to do here, because we haven't found the magic bullet that solves all these issues. And this is something we're going to continue to learn. And with the right tools in place, we will be able to, I think, do the very best we can and enhance overall learning and teaching. I wish I had some interesting anecdotes to share with you. That's the best I can do.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. Anything to add to that, Michael?
Yeah, I think we'll learn a lot as we're continue to move forward with this, and I think we need to really distill a lot of the data that we've gotten this past year to be able to identify the best practices. A lot of people actually ask me all the time, say, what are the best practices for online courses, the best practice for engaging the students, or how do you handle that some of the classes have all the videos turned on and some do not, and I think we need to actually take a lot of the data that we've gathered this year, kind of distill it and analyze it, and then I think we'll have some good data as we kind of then go into the new school year. But I think we're still gathering that data today.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
Very well said, Michael, because one of our challenges has been, literally we've been trying to fly the airplane as we have been designing it this whole year. And so we haven't had a chance to just sit back and, to your point, take a look at data, interview and talk to our faculty colleagues across, talk to staff members, talk to students. Now we have done surveys, we have talked to, but it takes time. Some of this takes time to, and so I think it's all of us work together and collaborating and sharing ideas that have worked is the best way to go forward.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And look, here's the thing. I actually think, even though we've been doing this now for a year, there's still only a limited amount of data that we're even looking at. So one of the things we're so excited about putting the dashboard technology in classes, really then getting down to the minute levels of actually being able to see, okay, how is student participation, or the amount that they talk in class, or the amount that they raise their hand, or the amount that they're called on, linked to how well they do on assignments or exams, or the way that the students interact with each other and the teacher. Like I'm so excited for, not what this data is going to tell us as we kind of, go into Q2. I think it's really, we're talking about how we analyze the data after collecting it next year. But I think we're going to get some really great insights in a way that we haven't been able to get before. So by having all this education moving online, I think we're going to be able to identify best practices. I think we're going to be able to identify better ways to do not just online learning, but in-person learning, and better segmenting the students into ways that they actually learn best. So again, I think education is going to go through a transformation, and it's all going to be about this data that we're now going to be collecting. But I think we're just at the beginning of putting that data set together.
Absolutely.
And one comment to add to that, Michael, is in my own personal experience, I actually became a better in-person teacher when I taught a few classes online, because I had to actually really sit down and think about what I'm trying to communicate online when I was not going to be able to see students in some cases. Other cases, students were there, but they were remote all over the world. And I really had to spend a lot of time. And there, that team concept that I talked about, my instructional designer colleagues and others who had a lot more expertise than I ever would in that space were very helpful in helping me think through all of these and asking the right questions. So having that team around you is going to be really helpful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we are running kind of over on time, but I wanted to wrap it up with just kind of an overall question. So the past year has been tough. We've seen a lot of challenges, but we've also seen a lot of opportunities when it comes to technology. So what did you find did not work for the virtual experience? And then what opportunities are we looking forward to in the future as we continue to evolve in the world of ed tech? Let's start with you, Michael.
Look, I think that as I open this conversation with that, for all the change that we have undergone in the last 9 to 12 months, the fact that we have now put hundreds of thousands of teachers and millions of students and made them either become experts or get very familiar with online education is going to have huge ramifications. Even though right now everyone's just focused on getting back to school, the long-term effects of this, which I think are going to, as I open with, lower the cost and increase the access to the education, I think is going to have a profound effect, not only in education here in the US, but around the world. And I think that's coming over the next 1, 2, and 3 years. So I'm very excited about what all this forced change and adoption is going to really, and how it's going to help us improve things in the long run. So that's the same kind of items I started the conversation. I'll end it with. I think that ed tech is forever changing, and we're going to see it happening just over the next few months and years.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Ravi, any thoughts on that?
No, I think as I indicated before, we have learned a lot this past year, and we have to learn a lot more about analyzing the data and information we have. It is really important to simplify the tools and technology, as I indicated before, as best as we can. It's just not reasonable to expect a faculty colleague to be able to manage all the different things that we talked about. And that's why we need a team. We need the right set of tools. And Michigan, for our case, we're looking forward to partnering with innovative companies and colleagues to continue to enhance higher education delivery. And as Michael talked about, access and equity issues have to be solved, and they have to be done thoughtfully. I talked about the potential opportunity from federal government support, but there could be a lot of things we could do locally as well. And one thing I wanted to call out is this year has been extremely stressful. And one of the other things that has brought to light is the challenges and issues around mental health and wellness. So we need to work with each other collaboratively, and everyone needs to have empathy and patience towards each other as we navigate inspiring but challenging opportunities. So empathy and patience are a must as we go on this journey.
That is the perfect note to end on. Thank you so much, Ravi. Thank you, Michael, for sharing your thoughts on these important topics, and just looking forward to seeing what the future holds at the University of Michigan, at class, and just really across the country when it comes to higher education. So thank you all. Thank you to our audience for joining us today. If you want any further information on class, definitely check us out at class.com. If you have any questions, you can contact us there. And then also once again, have a great day, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi.